The needle went in clean, and that was the last clean thing about any of it. Marin Solis had been awake for 31 hours. When they brought her to the Veth medical station, which meant she was awake enough to be terrified and too exhausted to hide it, she lay on the transit gurney with her left arm pressed against her ribs, the arm that had been hit, and watched the station's bone-white ceiling scroll past, overhead, and thought about her mother's kitchen. The smell of cardamom, the yellow curtains, the small, ordinary fact of being safe. She thought about these things very deliberately, the way you think about an anchor when the current is bad. The Veth physician, if physician with even the word, moved around her on four jointed limbs. Its face was a cluster of pale sensory filaments that twitched in the recycled air. It communicated in a subsonic hum that the station's translation suite converted to something almost like language. The damage, it said, is significant. That was an understatement. The ambush at Relay Station Cora had been surgical. The Veth convoy had come in low and fast, and Marin's scout unit had walked directly into it. She remembered the burst of pressure, the sudden white silence, and then the hull of her drop suit crumpled around her arm like paper. 3 of her squad were dead. 2 more were in tubes. Marin was the lucky one which told you everything about how the night had gone. "We can restore function," the physician said. Its filaments trailed across a holographic readout. "We can do more than restore function." She looked at it. "Human tissue is," it paused. The translation suite struggled. "Inelegant. Redundant. We have developed a protocol. Stem lattice regeneration with Veth cellular templates. Your arm will heal completely. You will heal completely. Stronger, in fact. More efficient." Marin stared at the ceiling for a moment. She thought about the 3 body bags. She thought about Corporal Hendricks, 22 years old, who had been afraid of spiders and made the best coffee on the whole Concordat frontier and was now a name on a list somewhere. "Do it," she said. The Veth were not cruel. This was important to understand. Cruelty implied a kind of investment in suffering, a desire to see the thing hurt, to watch it register pain, to take something from the transaction. The Veth had no such investment. They were efficient. They were rational. They had been crossing the spiral arm for 11,000 years, absorbing what was useful from each species they encountered and discarding the rest. And they had long since stopped thinking of this process as violent. It was simply the way things were done. What they had not accounted for in 11,000 years was a species that refused to be processed. Marin spent 6 days in the medical station. The arm healed. The arm healed faster than any human limb had any business healing. On day 3, she was flexing her fingers. On day 5, she was doing pull-ups on the frame of her bunk, which the station's attending orderly clocked and reported as a data point. Human physical adaptation to Veth cellular templates accelerated beyond projected baseline. Interesting. On day 6, she started having the dreams. They were not nightmares exactly. They were more like channels, signals from somewhere she didn't have words for. She dreamed of movement in darkness, of tracking heat signatures through walls, of a hunger that was not quite hunger but occupied the same space in the body. She woke each time with her heart loud in her ears and her newly rebuilt arm pressed flat against the bunk, fingers spread, as if she were listening through the floor. She didn't report the dreams. She was not sure why. It felt private. It felt like something that was hers. On day 7, they cleared her for duty and sent her back to her unit. Lieutenant Carver met her at the airlock of the Amaranth, which was not standard protocol and therefore meaningful. He was a tall man with a jaw like a shelf and the particular stillness of someone who had been very frightened very recently. "You look good," he said, which was what people said when they didn't know what else to say. "I feel good." She flexed the arm. "Better than good, honestly." Something moved behind his eyes. "Yates wants to debrief you, I figured. He's going to ask about the procedure." "I know, Marin." He stopped walking. The corridor was empty in both directions, just the low thrum of the ship's drive and the smell of recycled air and machine oil. The smell that was home. "Whatever they did to you, whatever it was, you need to be straight with me." Are you straight with me? She looked at him. She had known Carver for 4 years. She had watched him hold it together in situations that would have broken most people. Watched him make the kind of decisions that left marks you didn't talk about. He deserved honesty. I don't know yet, she said, but I'm still me. I know that. He nodded slowly. It was not the answer he wanted, but he accepted it, which was one of the reasons she trusted him. The debrief with Commander Yates lasted 2 hours. She told him everything about the ambush. She told him about the medical station, the procedure, the physician with the trailing filaments. She did not tell him about the dreams. She sat across from him in the windowless briefing room and watched his face cycle through the things he was thinking, and she folded her hands on the table. Both hands, both of them working, and she kept her breathing even and her voice flat and professional. And when it was done, she walked back to her bunk and sat on the edge of it in the dark for a long time. The hunger had started that morning, not for food, for something else. Something she didn't have the vocabulary for yet. She pressed her palm against her sternum and breathed through it and told herself it was adrenaline. Told herself it was the decompression of coming back from a trauma response. Told herself the body was strange and she would be fine. She was not fine, she was something else. She was in the process of becoming something else. She could feel it the way you feel weather coming. In the pressure, in the quality of the light, in some layer of awareness below language that was nonetheless perfectly clear. She pressed her thumb against the inside of her rebuilt arm, where the new tissue was smooth and tight and warm, and she thought, I agreed to this. And then she thought, but I didn't know what I was agreeing to. The thing about the Veth cellular templates, which Maren pieced together over the next 2 weeks, through observation and a kind of sick intuition, was that they were not passive. They were not a scaffold for human tissue to grow around. They were a system, a communication system. The Veth were hive-adjacent, not a true hive mind, but deeply networked, their biology threaded through with chemical and bioelectric channels that kept each individual tethered to the collective's information stream. What the physician had done to Maren Cesarm was not simply regenerative, it had built her a receivus. She started hearing the Veth on the 6th day after her return. Not language, not thought, something more primitive. Emotional weather, the biological underscore of a species that communicated in ways that went below speech. She would be eating in the mess hall and feel a spike of distant alarm. She would be running the corridor drills and catch the edge of something that translated imperfectly as satisfaction. She logged none of this. She ran her drills, she ate her meals. She kept her face neutral and her mouth shut, and she thought, very carefully, about what she was going to do with what was happening to her. Private O.C. found her in the equipment bay on a Tuesday, sitting on a crate with her eyes closed and both arms resting on her knees, palms up. Lieutenant? He was 19. He had been in the unit for 4 months. He had the kind of face that still expected the world to make sense. You okay? She opened her eyes. Sit down, O.C. He sat on the crate across from her. He was quiet for a moment, which was one of his better qualities. I'm going to tell you something, Maren said, and you're going to think I've lost it. But I need you to listen anyway. He nodded. The Veth know we're planning the push on Sector 7. He went very still. I can hear them, she said it simply. Not words, not exactly, but it's information. They're nervous. That's what I'm picking up. Nervous and prepared. They have something waiting for us at the Sector 7 relay point, and they're pleased about it. O.C. stared at her. She watched him working through it. The leap from the known world to this one. It was not a small leap. She gave him time. Can they hear you? He asked finally. She considered. I don't think so. I think it's one-directional. I'm receiving, not transmitting. He was quiet for another moment. Then, you need to tell the commander, I know. He's going to freak out, I know. And then he's going to use it. O.C. said it without judgment, just recognition. Whatever you are now, whatever they made you, he's going to use it. Maren looked at her hands, the rebuilt arm, the new tissue smooth under her sleeve. She thought about the physician's trailing filaments, She thought about being processed. She thought about Hendrix, who had been afraid of spiders and was now a name on a list. "Good," she said. Yates did freak out. He did it quietly, in the contained way of someone who had long practice at keeping catastrophic reactions internal. But Marin had known him long enough to read the signs. The muscle at the corner of his jaw, the careful flatness in his voice, the way he set his coffee down very precisely. He also listened to everything she said without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for almost a full minute. "The push on Sector 7 is in 9 days, he said. "I know. If what you're describing is accurate, it's accurate. Then we have an intelligence asset that the entire Concordat combined fleet doesn't have." He looked at her. "I need you to understand what that means." "I understand what it means. It means I can't put you in the field, not in the conventional sense. You're going to be running from the Amaranth feeding real-time intel, and we're going to rebuild the entire approach around what you hear." He paused. "And I need to report this. Admiralty, Xenobiological Division, the whole chain." "I know," Marin said again. "You're not angry?" She thought about it. "I was. For about a week I was very angry. I felt like something had been done to me without my consent, like I'd been changed without choosing it." She flexed her left hand. "But I did choose it. I just didn't know all the information when I made the choice, and I can choose what to do with it now." Yates nodded. He picked up his coffee. "Also," Marin said, "I can tell you exactly how many Veth are currently stationed at the Sector 7 relay. Their emotional affect is distinct enough that I can roughly count individual sources." He put the coffee back down. "How many, 43? She paused. "And they're scared of us. Underneath the preparedness, underneath the strategy. They're scared. They've been fighting us for 6 years, and they still can't figure out why we don't stop." Something shifted in Yates's face. Not triumph, something older than that. "Tell them everything you hear," he said. "Every day, every shift, all of it." "Yes, sir." The 9 days were strange. Marin ran drills with the unit in the mornings, ran her listening sessions in the afternoons, sitting in the quiet of the briefing room with the recorder running, reporting what she could pass from the receiver in her arm, and ate dinner in the mess hall with Carver and OC and the others, and tried to be normal, tried to be the person she had been before the needle went in. She wasn't that person anymore. She knew it. She had known it since the first dream, but she was still a person. That was the thing the Veth hadn't accounted for, the thing that 11,000 years of processing other species had somehow failed to teach them. You could change a human profoundly. You could rebuild her arm, rewire her biology, thread her through with silicial architecture, and what you got was not a Veth. What you got was a human who could receive Veth communications. What you got was a human who would then use that capability in the most specifically, stubbornly human way possible. OC brought her coffee every morning. He never made a thing of it, just set it down next to her and sat nearby, cleaning his kit or reading, keeping her company in the way that didn't require acknowledgement. On the 5th day, she told him he didn't have to do that. "I know," he said. "You should be doing something useful. This is useful." He ran a cleaning patch through the barrel of his rifle with the ease of long habit. "You're sitting in that room for 4 hours every afternoon picking signals out of alien biology. Coffee is the least I can do." She looked at him. He was 19 years old, and he had already decided what kind of soldier he was going to be. She felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't known was tight. "Thank you," she said. "Don't mention it." He passed her the coffee without looking up. "What are they doing today?" "Running formation drills at the relay point. They know we're coming. They just don't know we know they know." "Classic," Oze said. "Thing else." She had been sitting with this for 2 days, not sure how to frame it. "The one who's in command over there. I can't see them exactly. It's more like a weight, a presence that the others orient toward. And today there's something new in it. Something I didn't expect." "What?" "Doubt," Marin said. "For the first time, I'm getting doubt from the commander. Like they're questioning whether the plan is good." OC was quiet for a moment. "Because of you?" he asked. She shook her head. Because of us, because of all of us. 6 years of this, and they still can't predict what we'll do next. She looked at her hand. They built me a receiver. They never thought about what I'd do with the signal. The push on Sector 7 launched on a Thursday, ship time at 400. It was not the push the Veth were expecting. The approach vectors were different. The timing was off by 11 minutes from standard Concordat doctrine, and 3 of the 4 strike teams went wide around the relay point in a wide encircling movement that the Veth commander had not anticipated because it was tactically wasteful by any logical calculus. The Veth thought in efficiencies. They planned for rational actors. They had been fighting humans for 6 years, and they still fundamentally believed, at some deep architectural level, that the humans would eventually start making sense. The 4th team, Carver's team, Marin running comms from the Amaranth, went straight up the middle. She talked them through it in real time. She had Carver's channel and the unit's individual channels, and she could feel the Veth positions the way you feel a bruise. A pressure, a wrongness, a place where the air was different. She called it all. 2 Veth, Junction 12. Stop. 30 seconds, they'll cycle left. They stopped. The Veth cycled left. Carver's team went through Junction 12 clean. Sniper position at the upper relay bay. They're calm. They think they have the angle. Tell me how to take the angle from them. 40 degrees left. Come around the support strut. They're watching the main corridor. They don't know about the maintenance passage. They went through the maintenance passage. Marin sat in the briefing room of the Amaranth with her arm resting on this table and her eyes closed, and she breathed steadily and pulled what she could from the signal and fed it to her people. And somewhere across the sector, the Veth commander was realizing that the plan was failing and not understanding why, and she could feel that too, the confusion, the mounting alarm, the thing that translated imprecisely as, "This is not possible. We planned for this. We accounted for all the variables." They had not accounted for her. The relay point fell in 40 minutes. Standard doctrine projected 6 hours minimum for that kind of fortified position. Concordat casualties. 2 wounded, none fatal. Veth casualties substantial. When it was done, and Carver's voice came over the channel saying, "We're clear. Relay is ours. All teams sound off." Marin sat back in her chair and let out a breath that she'd been holding for 9 days. Osi was sitting across from her. He had been there the whole time, quiet, not looking at his kit, watching her instead. When she opened her eyes, he was already looking at her. "You okay?" he asked. She thought about the question. She thought about the needle going in clean, and the dream channels, and the thing inside her arm that was Veth, and the thing inside her chest that wasn't, that never had been, and never would be no matter what they did to her. "Yeah," she said, "I think I am." He nodded. He got up to get more coffee. She watched him go, and she thought about Hendricks, the way she always thought about Hendricks, and then she did what Hendricks would have wanted her to do with a victory. She let herself have it. For about 30 seconds, she sat in the quiet of the briefing room with her rebuilt arm warm against the table, and she let it be real. Then she picked up her recorder and started logging what she'd heard. Because the Veth commander was still out there, regrouping, running the calculations again, looking for the variable that kept destroying their plans. And they would find it eventually. They would adapt. They were 11,000 years old, and they had never yet encountered a problem they could not eventually account for. But they had never encountered this. A woman with a receiver who decided what to do with the signal. A species that took what one does to them and turned it into something the architects hadn't intended. The Veth were efficient. They were rational. They planned for rational actors. They had been planning for the wrong kind of animal. 3 weeks later, Admiralty sent a xenobiological team. 4 scientists, 1 military ace, 1 officer from the Concordat Intelligence Directorate, who introduced himself only as Marsh and watched Marin with the flat, careful attention of someone cataloging an asset. She sat across from all of them in the briefing room and answered every question completely and accurately and without omission. And when they were done, the xenobiologist, a small woman named Doctor. Pell, who had the slight tremor of someone who drank too much coffee and the sharp eyes of someone who used it to good effect, leaned forward and said, "You understand that the cellular templates in your arm are still active, that this is an ongoing process." "Yes," Marin said, "the reception may become clearer over time. You may develop additional capabilities we can't yet predict." "I understand." "And you're comfortable with that?" Marin considered the question. She thought about the first morning after her return, waking in her bunk with the dream still on her and pressing her palm flat and breathing through the strangeness of it. She thought about what she'd said to Carver. "I don't know yet. But I'm still me." She was still her. She was more than she'd been. Both of these things were true simultaneously, which was not a paradox that troubled her particularly. She was human. She was used to holding contradictions. "I'm useful," she said. "That's what I'm comfortable with." Marsh made a note. Dr. Pell looked at her for a long moment with an expression that was not quite scientific detachment. "For what it's worth," Pell said, "what you did at Sector 7, the application of the signal for tactical purposes, we hadn't modeled that outcome. When we run the predictions for what a human subject would do with Veth biological integration, we don't typically get that. What do you typically get? Fear, rejection, attempts to remove or suppress the foreign biology." Pell paused. "Not strategic intelligence gathering." Marin looked at her rebuilt arm. The tissue was smooth and warm and integrated, and underneath it she could still feel the faint hum of the Veth network, like a radio station at the edge of range, the distant emotional weather of a species that thought it had remade her. "They built me a door," she said. "I walked through it." Pell made her own note. The intelligence officer continued to watch. Outside the briefing room, Marin could hear OC's voice in the corridor, arguing cheerfully with someone about the coffee rotation schedule. The specific mundane brightness of a 19-year-old who had survived something and come out the other side and didn't yet know how rare that was. "When can we start the next operation?" Marin asked. Nobody in the room looked surprised. That was the thing. They all knew on some level that this was the only question a human in her position would ask. Not "what have you done to me?" Not "how do I undo it?" Not "when can I rest?" What's next? The Veth had been crossing the spiral arm for 11,000 years, and in all that time, in all the species they had absorbed and discarded and processed, they had never once encountered a thing that looked at what had been done to it and immediately started planning how to use it. They were learning. Slowly, expensively, at the cost of relay stations and tactical projections and commanders who doubted their own plans for the first time in 11,000 years, they were learning. Marin was looking forward to teaching them more.